Hello and welcome to another edition of Behind Enemy Lines here on the Hawks Nest as we motor our way through this NFL season, and we're returning to the ranks. Friend here of the channel. That's not an easy thing to say here, Zach, being that you are also a rival. So this is not normally what this would go, but a friend indeed, and I've been on a couple times. Love chopping it up with him. We got our man Zach here from Payo Time in the house on YouTube here. How you doing, Zach?
Dude, I'm doing so good. Thank you, Brandon, for having me back on the Hawks Nest. And we can be friends. I can still, disagree. Like, I have friends that I disagree with their life choices. And, you cheering for the Seattle Seahawks is one of those choices I disagree with. But I can still be your friend. I can be, I can care about you, and I hope you can do the same for me.
Well, there you go. The season I'm having, I may not be ending out at that point here, the way this thing's going. So who knows? Maybe changing those decisions here. Folks, before we get started here, we're going to chop it up on this upcoming matchup we got against the Rams this week. A very important game for our Hawks here on this year. But first things first, what we do here, we want to show the love to the folks who take the time. He is very busy, Zach, running left and right during this NFL season, but he's taking time out of his day to be here in our house to talk a little bit about this game. So please just do this favor. Down in the description link below, you can click the link directly to his YouTube channel account. Please give him a sub up, as these guys are kind enough to come on in here. That's what we should do when we have them come in. As I said, they get real busy. They could be doing anything in here. They're coming in here with us. So please do click that link on that. Show him the love over there on that side of it. And let's get into this. We've got a real fun matchup. I think before we get into kind of particulars of team and everything else, just give me a big picture where you're at from your Rams team at this point in time of the season.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. And the Rams season, it's been a roller coaster. They take Detroit to overtime week 1. They got really banged up from that game, and then we had Puka go down. We had massive O-line injuries. We had massive secondary injuries. Cooper Kupp goes out, and there's just so many question marks about this team. The defense, which is very young, definitely started off as a young defense would. They've improved, and especially last game against the Vikings, they were much improved. So you have a defense that you're hoping is ascending. And then we got Puka Nacua back last game. We got Cooper Kupp back last game. The O-line's getting a little bit healthier. And yeah, I think right now most Ram fans would say we're thankful we had an early bye. We needed it. We needed a bye so bad. And then so you have a bye, and then you had a get-right game versus the Raiders, which was closer than you would have wanted it to against a team that's kind of on the lower end of the NFL speculum, but the Rams, got the win, and a win is a win. And Matthew Stafford said in his post game of that game, which I'll never forget, he said, "We're not a team in a position to be picky over how we win games." And so they got an ugly win, and then they got the Thursday night win against the Vikings, which was a big win in the against the NFC opponent. So right now, the Ram fans and the Rams are riding high. When you win on Thursday, you get 10 days to enjoy it. And that's kind of where everyone is at right now. And I'm excited to preview this game with you because, the Seahawks, I said coming into this year, I think I said in our last live stream a couple of months ago, I think the Seahawks are one of the most fascinating NFL teams this season because you moved off of Pete Carroll, a longtime head coach, which I feel like Seahawks fans don't talk about enough. Of like, you got your first new coach in well over how long was Pete
14
there?
years.
14 years. 14 years, right? That's your longest tenured head coach, if I'm not mistaken.
I think Tomlin might have had him beat.
Oh, did he? Okay. But anyway, so a long time, and Mike McDonald is there, so I'm excited to hear your opinions on him. And but yeah, in regards right now, Ram fans and the Rams are excited. We know that there's a lot of work to do, but they're only one game out, and they're looking like they're going to have a nice little stretch of games here.
Yeah, it's really coming forward together for your team on that. And I've watched more games, I think, this year early on of your team than I've ever before because we do this round table on the NFC West every week. So you got to kind of do definitely your background stuff on looking at them. And it's been impressive to watch them kind of coming together and the plan coming together as we talked about being this offseason, it felt like there was going to be more of a transition here with Stafford, less of the let's go the volume approach with him, more of let's invest in the offensive line. Let's go to a little bit more of a running team. Let's keep those attempts from Stafford out of 40 range and more into about 25 to 30-ish range if we can, which is understandable to me for a guy getting older who's had some injuries and you want to protect him, and he can still be very good on those 30 attempts. So I didn't think that was a bad. I thought it was really actually a smart adjustment there by McVay to turn in that direction, because coaches will just stay in their kind of same mode with how they want to run, especially offensive coaches that like to pass. How, from your eyes, has that transition happened? And I know you asked a little bit about the McDonald question, so I didn't lost that, but I wanted to see real quick where you are on that side of it with that change.
I have to start with Kyren Williams in the run game. He has really emerged as an elite running back, and a lot of people don't give him the credit for that. He has very good vision. He's become a very patient runner. Mm-hmm. And I think when the Rams and Sean McVay and the Rams coaching staff, offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur, saw that in him, they were like, you know what, we really need to invest in beefing up this O-line because we do need to become more of a run heavy team. And unfortunately, before the season started, the Rams had so many injuries to their starting O-line that just kept getting injured. But I do like, Steve Avila. We haven't seen him very much at all this year, but I'm excited for him to get back. I know if you follow his recovery on Instagram, it's been exciting to see him. He's cheering on the Rams each and every week, and he's just, I think there's a chance that he's back for this game, but Sean McVay said in his press conference yesterday, likely it's going to be 2 or 3 more weeks until he's back, but he's going to apparently try practicing this week. But then, this O-line though, like especially running to the outsides, that's become I would say a strength of the Rams, which is something that they maybe have struggled with in the past 2 seasons. But I would say with Kyren Williams really coming into his own as a running back, and Blake Corum, the running back out of Michigan, who very limited sample size has looked good in kind of that Kyren relief role, if you will, as of right now.
Boy, I just feels like to me there's a bit of a difference between the two when they go out there. I mean, I liked what Kyron's done, but when I watch Blake go out there feels like there's a substantial difference from the burst and that ability to really go 0 to 50, so to speak, with Corum. And we knew his speed thing was going to be a bit of a question mark with him as it was. And he still, I'm not saying isn't potentially a good back or can develop in that way. Just to my eyes on some of that just seems like you lose a little juice once Kyren goes out of the game versus Blake. Yeah. Like,
it's, I would say it's just been a very small sample size for Corum. I don't think he's actually been in for a complete series. I'd have to go back and look. He truly has only came in relief. And so maybe if he's the type back that you get him more touches in the game, he does well. But as of right now, Kyren Williams is having a career year. He scored a touchdown in every single game this season. And I think he's going to keep doing it.
It's a good chance this week against this rushing defense, my man, because we are god awful when it comes to our ability to stop the run right now. And I'd expect you guys to hammer that endlessly as one should right now, the way we're playing. And you mentioned McDonald. It's certainly been some fits and starts, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, kind of feeling to it a little bit. We are still very excited about what he brings to play, but I think that it just, as it stands, there was a bit of a feeling from Hawk fans, I think, coming into this year that maybe we're pretty close. Not that we had to compete this year, but that we were close from a talent standpoint. And instead, as you get halfway into the year and the way that this is trending, it starts to feel like we're further and further away from a talent standpoint, or just merely maybe we have good talent, but it's not the talent that fits to the way the scheme wants to be run by McDonald. And so that does dishearten people a little bit when they start to think this is going to be a bit of a longer time process to get it back around there, because it has been a while. We got 1 playoff win since 2017. So it's been a long period of time where we haven't been able to be very good. And I think that the Hawk fans are definitely pining for that. But we got to be patient. We're still, trusting that process, but it has not been necessarily a fast one here. Even though we're at 4-4, it's not a pretty 4-4. Our 4-4 and the Niners 4-4, for instance, are quite different in the way that we got there. So we're encouraged right now ourselves on this side, but it is definitely going to be rough. And Everybody in this division runs the football. When you talk about looking at for this year, for this team and the Hawks and the potential of this year, we cannot stop the run, my man. I mean, you can run at will on us. There's 7-8 yards to be had. I keep coming back to wonder if it's a question, an effort thing at times for me, because I just don't understand how it can be so bad with this much talent out there. But it is what it is on that side of it, and it's been there on every single game. So it's probably not changing anytime soon.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because I would say that the Rams are also a team that, especially early in the year, you can run on. So this might be a run, a track meet in terms of, just you get a 50-yard rushing touchdown, and then Kenneth Walker gets a 50-yard touchdown, because the Rams have definitely given up the run, especially up the middle. So I expect the Seahawks to attack that. And yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Quick question about Gino Smith. I've seen some of the bench Gino community in the Seahawks fandom a little bit. Oh, what's up, Kat? Where are you? Do you want to see Drew Lock taking snaps for you? And I'd love
it's Sam Howell. Sam Howell now. Drew Lock's moved on.
Oh, right. Sorry, Sam Howell. My apologies.
No, you're good. It's kind of one of my big issues right now, not just with, I deal with this on the roundtable. I deal with it in a lot of discussions with people nationally and locally with fans. Something has happened in NFL fandom when it comes to the quarterback position, in my opinion, that's broken the brain of fans. And what I mean by that is that that becomes the end all be all thing for the team. That you just everything you look through the lens of the team starts and ends sort of with the quarterback. And I really hate this mentality. It really drives me ultimately just about crazy, because this team has got about 20 problems and Gino's not that. He's not that. Those are the things we should be concentrating on. But because of this modern pull to fall in love with the quarterback, I love me, my quarterback, that these fans suffer from, that they all then want to drift to the quarterback and ignore all of these other issues that are on the table that are causing you to fail on a weekly basis. And Gino is not that. We talked this offseason, and I told you this offseason, he's dealt with about 10 things that if you put a quarterback up that they're having to deal with. Crap defense that lives on the football field and allows long drives that can't tackle. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. They don't get after the passer. They don't cause turnovers. Offensively, you have a league worst offensive line that can't create holes in the running game and can't pass protect. Now we have good receivers, but even that, there's been some drop itises that comes through there from time to time where you can't even lean on them really fully like a strength. And I would offer that the two guys in Lockett and JSN are maybe getting a little bit even locally and nationally times overvalued, where they're good receivers, but those aren't game-changing receivers. And there are limitations in what they bring, especially when it comes to yak and their ability to block in the run game. And when you talk about your guys' run game, and I think we've almost pretty much had to just rip out our play sheet on outside zone runs and pitch plays to the outside, because we can't trust our receivers out there to hold up on the corners. And the corners are going to go make the tackles if we're going to go out there to the running backs there. So, it's been painful on this front, but Gino's not the problem. He really isn't. And if you had given him a better supporting cast right now, you'd be seeing a top 5 level quarterback, I think, in Gino. The problem is that we just cannot seem to put together a supporting cast here in the last couple of years with him around it. And so it's where people go simplistically. They go, oh, offense not working, Gino not working. Gino must be the reason. Bench Gino. But Sam Howell is not close to Gino Smith. It's not close. He's not close. And I'm not a big believer in benching the guy who's not the problem at that point when there's so many of the problems across the board.
If the Seahawks were to fall out of playoff contention, would you want to see what you have in Howell then?
No, because again, the point on this comes back to this is, again, supporting cast matters.
Yeah.
If you put a quarterback behind something that's going to cause them to fail, then let's get a look at this guy behind a failing supporting cast.
Right.
What is that going to inform you of? Then when he fails, what determination can you make of that player? That he sucks? See what I'm saying there? You can't make a proper evaluation until you take care of the thing at the front of the stack before you get to the quarterback. But everybody makes the determinations about quarterbacks like it's in a vacuum, and none of those other things really apply to the situation. It's just them out there making it all happen or not making it happen.
Right.
And to me, it's like Stafford, for instance. You lose your playmakers. There could be Rams fans of that. So maybe you heard this in the chat, but it would have been wrong. But this is the kind of thing you'll hear from fans on this. Oh, he's getting old. Look at the gray in his beard. Starting to Staff's like can't move anymore, And this is what's going on, man. It's like, no.
Oh,
He's got an
dude.
offensive line that's battered to hell. He's got all of his receivers out, right? But this is the math that sometimes fans will utterly refuse, and it's all in the name of, again, that quarterback being the end all be all at times. It just drives me up a wall, because this is a tough sport to analyze. It's not easy, and to simplify everything down to such a base level is getting lost in the forest despite the trees.
No, totally agree with you. And it was the most stereotypical NFL fan ever. When the Rams were 1-4, the amount of comments and things I saw online about it's time to trade Stafford before the deadline, or trade Cooper Kupp, and trade everyone, be sellers, where it's like, hopefully your team can get yourself out of it. And thankfully, the Rams getting two wins in 5 days helped them get to 3-4. And now everyone's like, Stafford's our guy. Let's go win another champion. Like, and it's just like people, we live in such a reactionary sports society.
There really is not any, in my opinion, and I'm getting more and more to the point of just thinking there's really not any quarterbacks that you're really going to be able to put in the position of having things fail on them to such a high degree. And that point with Stafford early on, you had injuries beset on the offensive line. Alaric Jackson was suspended through the first couple of games, your left tackle, and then you're down those receivers. And it doesn't matter how great the quarterback is. And this is the part that gets lost for fans. The part that like it's a synapses thing where the electricity will not shoot through, where they cannot do the 2-2 on that, where it's no quarterback's going to be good when you give him this kind of piss poor supporting environment. Stafford with the Lions didn't go and win any championships through 14 years there. Now he goes and win a championship with the Rams. And it's this thing where people would have said Stafford leaving from Detroit. And I was one of these guys who said, well, I don't think he can maybe win it, but this is the thing where you got to adjust and understand, oh wait, this should be a lesson this teaches people of how big supporting cast really does factor into the quarterback position. And they won't do it, unfortunately. So I'm not surprised to hear you saw it as well, though.
Well, and go outside of our division. Look at Baker Mayfield this year, or Sam Darnold, right? Or even like I was shocked seeing Jameis Winston play as well as he did last Sunday, right? And you take these journeyman quarterbacks who are no slumps. They got to the NFL for a reason, right? The only quarterback that I think I still question how he keeps getting jobs is Tim Boyle, but. But
those backups,
like,
man, those
a
backups
lot of these guys make it to the NFL and are, they have great college careers, or they go to the CFL or something like that, and they're able to do well if they do have those supporting cast around them. And I agree with you. And as a football fan, I appreciate Gino Smith a lot, right? I love a guy who was labeled a bust, and he was able to tear that label off his shirt and be like, no, I'm a starting quarterback in the NFL, and I'm the guy. And I appreciate that about Gino Smith. I was a little surprised last game. It looked like the cameraman didn't do him much solid. He looked kind of frustrated and kind of distraught on the sideline. Do you have any thoughts on that? Or
yeah, it's you put a guy for 2.5 years behind this failing supporting cast. Is it any surprise 2.5 years into that experience that the guy starts to get frustrated on the sidelines? And I know people in another place where fans want imminent patience from their players, right? Dude, you're professional. You just need to put on you're a leader with the. I get all that to a degree, but again, also why I've celebrated Geno Smith's play here for the past 2.5 years is that he's been in this environment, and yet he's by and large succeeded. He's been able to overcome. And now, like last week, you have a moment where he's not able to overcome, or against the Niners a couple weeks ago, not able to rise up the supporting cast around him as they are failing. And so you go from your standpoint at the quarterback position. Let's walk through this a little bit. Number one, he's in a contract year. There's a lot on the line right now for Geno Smith to go out there and earn that money. Right. Number two, 2.5 years of this failing supporting cast around him. His coach just got fired. He's on another offensive coordinator. Right. So, they've been not doing their part to put him on his best display to go earn that contract. So you see where I'm going with this, where, as a player, you're going, I'm trying to be the good soldier here. I'm doing my job. I'm bringing to the table what I need to be doing, and you're not doing what you need to be doing as a GM or as a coaching staff to help me out here. And so I think that's understandable frustration at that point. I've had people relate to me where they say, well, Russell never had that happen. Well, Russell never went into a final year of his contract either, did he?
Yeah. security, yeah.
You know, basically he wasn't going in on that kind of deal. Like he always wanted to be paid in advance and make sure this is why, for instance, he had the Broncos pay him before he actually played a snap on the football field. So that he didn't have to have himself in a mentality position where you're stressed out on the field because you're like, man, I'm trying to play for my contract here, and I don't have the parts here to make this happen. So then because here's the final point of this is how does it all come out in the wash? We just talked about it. How does all that come out in the wash for the basic average fan or for the basic narrative that then exists nationally on Gino? He sucks. Not good. And so then you come back to why is he frustrated? Well, do you think he's probably damn well aware of the fact that this is probably the way that this bears out and this is the case? Yeah, and it's not reality. So I come back around and go, I understand that. I get that. I'd be frustrated with it too. It's about time after 2.5 years that we start to pull up our bootstraps here and find a way to fix some of this stuff that they just is endlessly broken. Not some quasi-broken, not kind of in a disrepair, completely broken. You know, you can't stop the run. You on a weekly basis cannot stop the run. You can't, and it's offensively pass protection, man. I went back and looked through it. You look at quarterbacks who've had the kind of pass protection that he's had here the past 2.5 years, they all fail. Yeah. All of them to a man. You can find maybe one outlier in 5 or 6 years of a guy that finds some little bit of success in that kind of environment. But that's just one thing, right? That's just one data point. I can go to, again, like 8 or 9 data points here that when you put it all together, no quarterback is succeeding in that environment. Yeah. Everyone would be failing in that environment. And that's why I say right now, quarterback's not the biggest issue for your Hawks here. It's really about, we got to get the rest of this team up to snuff. We got a league worst offensive line. We got a defense with too much investment to be performing this badly throughout the courses of these seasons.
Fair enough. Well, I appreciate the perspective. And I guess in my mind, I viewed the Seahawks as, you know, with the hire of Mike Macdonald, moving on from Pete Carroll, and I guess, and this is totally an outsider perspective. Correct me if I'm wrong in chat. You know, you'll feel free to tell me off. I view the Seahawks as in a kind of a pre-rebuild year where like they have talent. They wanted to come in and give Gino this final year, see what they can do with it. But ultimately, they're getting ready to tear it down, blow it up next offseason. Am I correct in kind of looking at that?
I think that's right. I think people think when new coaches come in, it's a good point on your part. When new coaches come in, they think that the coaches will come in and clear house from the jump, right? And that they come in and that's where they're going to start making the big old moves and stuff. But in actuality, what coaches tend to do, what Carroll did when he first came in, is you assess the lay of the land. Who do you got? Who you don't got? Go through a year with them to find out who's going to be somebody who's going to be a good soldier for you and do what you need him to do. And that's what McDonald's doing, I think, right now. And to your point on that being that there are so many things that aren't looking good, and we'd hope that, hey, he's going to inherit a lot of really good stuff. You got as good a draft return haul off that Russell Wilson trade of any recent trade in NFL history that should have helped to kind of boom things up a little bit for you on that talent front to make us believe that, hey, this can maybe happen a little bit faster. Now, were we being a little bit impatient on that? Should we be a little bit more understanding that it does take a little bit more time? Probably. But also, I think it was reasonable to be hopeful that team could maybe be that good because I trusted Gino was a good quarterback. You trusted the talent that they've drafted. They've had some really good drafts in their approach there. So it hasn't come to culmination on that. But your bottom line point is I stand right now. And I mean, this even affects the Gino thing to me, where, for instance, we lose this game this week. I think that we've got to be big time sellers at the trade deadline. I do. I would, and quite frankly, I would almost use it as a point to start sending some messaging, because right now I've got questions about the level of commitment from this football team. When it comes to stopping the run, coaches have told me for years that it's about effort, want, and can do. And right now I see a lot of guys making business decisions on the football field when it comes to the run game. And I can only think the only way as a coach to rattle the saber and to wake people up is start to move some people. So get some future draft capital at that point. Start showing that this is not going to be acceptable if this is the efforts you're going to bring to play, if this is what we're going to get. And I got no issues if they want to do that if we come off this with it being a loss at this point. I really am tired of watching bad football on NFL Sundays. And 4 games this year that we've lost have been complete embarrassments. I mean, we have just gotten absolutely embarrassed. We've lost our home field advantage too on top of this, Zach. We're 15-15 in our last 30 games at home. That stadium was filled with blue. Seahawks fans are selling their tickets. It's going to be time for us now to start doing something a little bit more extreme to get this into the right direction. And that means not half measure. It means we're going to have to probably, like you say, go hard with it, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. It's the nature of the beast as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And I didn't think that this game would be that tipping point. But I guess when you're in the greater scheme of the NFL, there's really only like Rams have had their bye week, but 10 games left, right?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I guess 11 or no, it is 10 games left still because you have your bye week. But yeah, like, and that's, the margin of error is so slim in the NFL. And if you are a team where you're in kind of that middle, you do have to start making those decisions of, you know what, is it time to sell, get ready for next year, that sort of thing. And that's kind of the modern NFL roster building tactics that we live in right now. So do you think that Snyder and McDonald are thinking that? Like when you hear them in the press conference, are they kind of going that way?
Not as of yet fully, really. This is me making some advanced math here. And it may not even be just a pure talent thing where you may have the talented guys here that could work in a different team. But that's also part of what we have to keep in mind here is that McDonald has got his scheme, the way he wants to run it. He wants big physical guys, especially defensively speaking. And, maybe he doesn't have exactly the type of guys he needs here to run his defense the way he wants to run it. And so it's not about them not even being talented. Maybe they are talented. They just, you're taking the square peg and jamming it into the round hole. And it just doesn't quite, work on that front of it. But I think that you're talking about the margin of error, and I agree with it. And that's why it should be all that much more dissuading when you have these losses like you have, where you just got run out of the building, completely run out of the building where it's not close. And then that should not endear you to think that we're just a small adjustment here, a small adjustment there away from this all turning around and taking heat to, oh man, we've got 10, 15 things that we've got to get cleaned up. And that's probably not going to happen in the course of the remaining, 9 games on the year. So best to put our head down. And a bit of the problem, and the thing I've told you about before, I got a theory on teams being in 4 different states, and you got to know what state you're in to make the proper decisions about what you need to do as an organization. Your Rams just did this last week. I got to give them credit. They did it. We talked about it. Remember I said I give them credit last year with the $57 million of dead money and being willing to eat that dead money and say, hey, no, you're technically still contending at that point, right? You have Aaron Donald still at that point, but you made the hard decision because you said, we don't have this good enough. We got to take the extreme steps here to reroute this thing back down. And so that's what I think when I look at my team right now, those 4 states, you're ascending, you're rebuilding, you're in between, you're elite. And in between, it doesn't go from ascending to in between to elite. It goes from ascending to elite. And so your Rams team a couple weeks ago hey, we come on the scene thinking maybe we could be elite. We set it up to have the game, and it's not going that way. So if this goes a loss here, we lose this team of the Vikings. Okay, we're going to go and maybe do sell mode with a Stafford, maybe a sell mode with a Cooper Kupp. We'll read the line. But now if you win, now you're going to be back into this trade line. Remember, you're buyers now, right? And so that's, to me, that's the reading appropriately. What we've done, I think, a little bit is every year we convince ourselves we're a contender, and we don't take those real strong steps to turn the thing back around, turn it over. Instead we just we'll just add a little bit of this guy and add a bit of this guy and make this trade here, and then that'll fix everything. It's like, no, it needs a lot more, needs a much heavier hand on that side of it. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, speaking of buying, we have to talk about this hurts me. Ernest Jones.
Yes.
Brandon, when you reached out to collab with me, instantly I was like, man, I'm gonna have to talk to him about Ernest Jones. He is one of my favorite Rams players from the past couple of years. He was he was a rookie on the Rams Super Bowl roster in 2021, and when Aaron Donald retired, there was kind of this notion of, okay, Ernest Jones is the leader on defense right now. There was maybe debate about who was the best player on the defense between Quentin Lake or him, 1A, 1B. This is before the draft. Keep in mind. But then, so Aaron Donald retires. You're like, okay, Ernest Jones, he's the leader. All right, this is his defense now. And the Ernest Jones and the Rams had a very lengthy, months of going back and forth of contract negotiations. And the Rams historically have not paid inside linebackers at all. And I remember thinking, no, Ernest Jones, this is the one. They're going to pay him. They're going to pay him. And then we hear little things, nothing alarming, about Ernest Jones' knee injury that he had, he had to recover from. And you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe that's what's holding up the negotiation. But I legit, for all of June and July, was like, okay, any day now, they're going to announce a new contract with Ernest Jones. And I'd be like, yeah, like he's been a captain. He is ready for this. He's in the prime of his career. This is fantastic. He holds the Rams single season record for tackles. And he said that last year. And then in like the weirdest trade ever, which is saying something because Les Snead makes a lot of weird trades, they trade him to the Titans and they throw in a 7th round pick for a conditional 6th round pick, which means he was a cap dump or whatever. Sean McVay, when asked about him in just before the season started, said that this was a team move, and he left it at that. The Rams organization, players, coaches as a whole, nothing. We don't know anything else that went wrong. You can speculate, you can assume. I've seen some crazy rumors about just like disagreements on like defensive philosophy with Chris Shula, but again, that is pure speculation, no like legitimate source to that. And like he's an intelligent player. He's a good tackler. I wouldn't say he's super strong as a coverage linebacker, but like he's not terrible at it, but he's definitely a sure tackler. And I think if there's one player on the Seahawks defense that can help you defend the run, Ernest Jones is going to help you. So we trade him to the Titans, and I remember thinking, well, okay, that sucks. The Rams must really believe in their young linebackers that they got. Well, the Rams inside linebackers have really struggled this year, and last game Jake Hummel and Omar Spates did okay. I want to see more of them. It was Omar Spates' first NFL action as an undrafted rookie, but like we traded away Ernest Jones so that we could start Christian Roseboom, right? Or Troy Reader, and again, not to take anything away from those guys, the effort's there, but just not necessarily at the same level of talent as Ernest Jones. And so when I hear the Seattle Seahawks traded a 4th for one of my favorite players from the past couple of years, I'm not happy about that. I don't want to see him and say like, I know you didn't like seeing Bobby Wagner as a Ram for that 1 year. Yeah. I'm not happy seeing Ernest Jones as a Seahawk. And what makes me even more nervous, I feel like the Seahawks are going to pay him and they're going to be happy about it. Only concern, because I think he might have been leading the Titans in tackles when he was playing with them. The only concern that like you maybe have him is that knee injury that kind of lingers a little bit maybe, but as far as I can tell, that hasn't been a problem. And I think the Rams have missed him this year. I'm a big fan of Sean McVay and Les Snead and that, but I still do disagree with this trade just from what we've seen so far out of this. Anyway, but love to hear your thoughts on Ernest Jones.
Yeah, I think like you said, there's a lot into it with this why the Rams made the decision, which, whether you hate it or not, at least you can say, well, they were taking into account a lot of different factors there. Positional value, like you talk about, they have not paid an inside linebacker there since McVay or Les Snead's been there. I don't count the Bobby Wagner contract, which is basically a 1 year, very short-term deal. So they just don't really do it and teams have philosophies that way. And I'm with that. I understand that. I like having positional value, and especially from their standpoint, because what they do instead of that is where does that value go then back to? Your trenches. Your investment in the offensive line, your investment in the defensive line, which I still believe, I know it's a cliche, but I still do believe the NFL is won in the trenches, and that I think if I've got to make the choice between a linebacker or going defensive line, I'll go defensive line, which you guys doubled up on in this last draft, for instance. So I think I get where they're coming from on that. I'd heard some rumors too about maybe not being out of shape. I think some of that is that game you play a little bit with a player who starts for you, like you say, day one, Super Bowl championship, coming off his best year, probably after that third year, he's earned that contract extension, and then you as a franchise go, hey, no, we've got positional value here.
Yeah.
we don't go down that because the position, well, you go, if he's a player, am I working out as hard that offseason? I mean, I busted my butt and you're not going to reward me. I mean, so then he doesn't come up to camp, maybe in shape, maybe there's a little bit of a knee thing. They got the positional value thing. And it all just kind of leads to the road to them then move him. Not that he's not a good player, but that then they go, no, we don't want to do that. And I think that the coverage limitations from their standpoint on this probably also weighed in there on that, where, like you said, it's not necessarily horrible, but it's bad enough. I mean, he got picked on in this last game a little bit to ours. He led us in tackles too. So he was really good on, to your point, on being a run defender and as a tackler. And it's what our defense definitely needs. But I think I get where, they're coming from for why they moved him necessarily. I still don't think it's a good, they've gotten away with it. And some of these organizations, I guess, do, where you have a player who has 3 years leader, earn that contract. You don't give him that contract, you move him, but your team's going to still go out there and win. Where normally that can send a reverberation through the locker room of like, hey, are they going to reward us if we ball out and do everything we can do? I mean, that was a Super Bowl champion. And so I like him a lot as a player. I think he does fit really well to this defense. I think another part of this that you got to probably structure up on this one is that they liked using him a lot as a blitzer. And a big part of using him as a blitzer was the ability to then work off of Donald, where Donald draws so much attention. And you could do things like Donald drives the double team, you slant the defensive line this direction, and then you roll Ernest off the backside, off the slant of the defensive line, right? And then he gets free as a rusher because so much of that attention, it's like, Donald was in orbit, a sun, and everything's just kind of orbits in around him. And so you could kind of create, and they go, well, we're not gonna be able to do that as much this year anymore. And something I've got to give the Rams credit that stands out is that they've taken over the Cowboys team this year, I think, as the best stunting team in the NFL, loops and stunts. Yeah. And so it's more now front four, it seems like to me. I'd see if you can confirm this, but more front four from the Rams and more stunting, less of the blitz package of stuff that you might have run with Donald.
Definitely. And I'm still a wishful fan that Aaron Donald comes out of retirement for this season.
I think it's possible.
But I'll say this: the Braden Fiss and Jared Verse picks have so far looked like hits. I know they had a lot of criticism for Braden Fiss, but he's been phenomenal. I know through 8 weeks, Jared Verse leads all rookie edge rushers in pressures. And then the second to him in all pressures is Braden Fiss for rookies this year. So really excited for this. Then, with Kobe Turner and Byron Young as that young front four, it's an exciting group. They're not Aaron Donald, but they are a different animal. They are a different scheme, and teams have to respect them for the pressure that they can do. Donald, the thing about Donald, he could collapse the pocket from the interior position or outside. Like he was so good, especially later in his career when they'd move him around more. But with this kind of new, I would say kind of multi-pronged attack with the Rams, front four, I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do against Seattle and moving forward, because they've gotten better each and every game this year, which is what you want to see.
Yeah, that was the thing that I hadn't taken into account as much with Braden Fisk. Is that the use of the stunts. It's the part where I didn't have the imagination on this, and especially between the two Florida State guys that you've got between those guys, because they've been working those games down there at Florida State, Fisk and Verse, for years. And I was looking at this more through the lens of, with Fisk, not going to be a particularly good run defender, the short arms, how's he going to win one-on-one? But it's a lot of those pressures he's generating on come from those stunts, which takes into basically having him do what he does best, which is he's really a good mover in space, good lateral mover for his size. That it's leaning into that stuff. So it's asking him to do less of the traditional, I'm just going to whoop this guy's butt in front of me, and more, again, you got your defensive line kind of all working together in their pass rush and the way that they go about it. It's impressive to see, and it's very unique. There's not a lot of teams that necessarily do it that exact same way. It's helped, I think, this young crew get even more productive. Not that they don't have some upside too. And Byron Young he's very explosive there off the edge. You really feel that he had that one play this year with a couple weeks ago in the back end zone where I think he almost didn't think he was going to get there that fast on the quarterback. And he almost lets up on the quarterback, if you remember. And I think the quarterback ends up kind of throwing to get the pass, but It was almost like he surprised himself by how quickly he got there.
Yeah.
On that particular play. But how is now the secondary? Seems like it's got a little bit of some places that you can make some headway on right now. It's been a little rotation at corner. Travis White's not been too particularly.
He's on the trade block.
Huh?
He's on the trade block.
Yeah. You could see that one coming, though. I think we talked about this offseason where it's like, man, there's not going to be anything left in that tank.
Yeah. I think the Rams took a cheap flyer on him. Didn't work out. And to be honest, so apparently he and his representation have asked the Rams to explore a trade. there was a part of me that was like, we might just cut him, but okay,
Yeah.
like
Who's giving you anything for him?
okay, like maybe the Rams are being greedy with Tre'Davious White, but I'll give White credit for this. He definitely has been that good like elder presence in the locker room, and like I didn't know a lot about him off the field from his days in Buffalo, but I'll say I'll appreciate that in the off season. But I'd be okay if we don't see him suit up in a Rams uniform ever again, because he's had so many bad penalties this year. He's had so many bad things. And Sean McVay said on his latest Coach McVay show that they probably played him more than he understood he would be played coming in here, and like there were some expectations not met in just how that worked out. And part of that is, Darius Williams got injured during training camp, but he's back now, and we're thankful for that. So we'll see. I will say, like, in terms of the Rams secondary, there's question marks there. And certainly with Metcalf and, Lockett and Jigma coming in, there's a little nervous, but I'm hopeful that the Rams pass rush can get home and help it so that the secondary doesn't have to cover for too long all day.
Yeah, that's going to be definitely one of the keys on this one. And you guys have done a good job with it. And our line's not done a good job of holding back on it. So, part of the reason we got to run the ball here and not get ourselves in annoying passing situations if we can. Snail, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate you for that, Snail. Every bad run defense expected us to try running the ball. Too bad Grubb's offense is too soft to get it done. Even Tom Brady pointed it out. Yeah, it's a lot of news this year for our Seahawks. One of the news that we have is, of course, offensive coordinator Grubb, college offensive coordinator, trying to kind of make that transition from college to the pro scheme. And it's been a bit of a rough road a little bit. It's not been bad. Certainly offense has outperformed, I think, the defense, in my opinion. But running the ball, being consistent in running the ball, having a diversified rushing attack, these are all things that have not happened up to this point, Zach. And even against teams that are bad at stopping the run, we're not able to get after it. The Bills basically down their 2 inside linebackers in this last game, and we just could get nothing done, average about a yard per carry. We're just not a very physical football team on either side of the ball. And when it comes to the trenches, we lose a lot in the trenches, a lot. So thank you, though, Snail. Appreciate the donation. And we just don't do it. We don't have a commitment to it and can't do it too well. It's hard on both. If you can't run the ball well, it's hard to be committed to it. If you're constantly ending up in 3rd and 8s trying to run the ball twice on 1st, 2nd down, but it's just one of many problems here for our Hawks right now. Thank you, Snail, for the $5, brother. Appreciate you on that.
Okay, I'm curious, like, your expectations for this Hawks team. Sounds like they haven't been met this year. How have they changed? And like, are you still like, because you're still in contention? This NFC West is wide open. Right? Like, do you expect them to compete for the division title?
No, not right now. And I mean, this week will tell me a lot about it. But they've been very inconsistent teams. If you're going to try to make a prediction about those in general, it's probably a fool's errand. But you've gotten embarrassed to me too badly. And the thing with this is that my expectation level this year wasn't really about getting the playoffs so that this team has to go out and compete this year. Quite the opposite. It was more of, let's just see how this plays out, be patient with the process, and then we'll take the next step on what we need to do. But that's also being accurate in evaluating what we're seeing on the football field. And as I said, when I come through the 8 games into this year and I can't stop the run, I can't stop the pass, I can't rush the passer, I can't cause turnovers. Offensively, I can't run the ball. I can't pass protect. I can't get consistent drives on a normal basis. Turnovers tend to be too much of a problem. Undisciplined play across the board. Too many penalties. You start to go, there's too much stuff. Yeah. It's one thing when you got a couple of things to clean up. It's another thing when it's just a litany of items that, and one problem gets cleaned up, another problem creates itself like whack-a-mole. And so you just come back to the spot of saying, okay, it's going to take a while. My disappointment doesn't come with really the bottom line on the wins and losses. I was really less presupposed to, caring about that. It was about how can the onboarding process be undertaken here by both sides of the ball. You're going from some of the most simplified concepts on offense and defense to some of the most complicated, theoretically, concepts on offense and defense. And we're not really onboarding, it doesn't feel like. Doesn't feel like Grubb's really running his system. Feels like he's held back by the offensive line. He's held back by maybe some of the receivers and their inability to block off the edges. Grubb spoke this last week about the fact that he's not able to run all this stuff because he can't get into the right down and distance points because you just can't stop the run. You can't do just the base things to get to the advanced stuff. So you're not really even making progress here. We're sort of just a little bit spinning in place. That's the frustration. It's just you want to see some incremental process. And instead, as I said, it's been more of we still feel a little bit like we're at square one here, even though we're halfway into the season. And that's the part that I was not anticipating would be the case. I thought we'd get better as the year goes along. Thought things would start to see more of the identity of this team. We don't have an identity. What do we do? You know, Zach, as a Rams fan, what is it that we do? And you can mention players, you can mention, but really, what is our identity? What is it that we lean on? I can tell you, the Rams want to run the ball. Rams want to get after it in the pass rush with you. They're really specific in that way, I think, to the degree, you know, and they're going to lean on their offense first and foremost, the way that they've structured this. Some of this is just dealing with Donald's retirement and having to kind of reset that whole defense was built up around him. So you had to reset kind of that process. But that's where I'm at a little bit with it. These have been really bad losses. It's not just you barely lose the game. It's not giving me like you guys have against the Lions, really good team, right? You guys take that game down to the line, right? I think that's in Detroit, if I'm not mistaken. You have
overtime, yeah.
In Detroit, that's with Tre'Davious White giving up his crap, and with you having your injuries going on, and you take them into overtime. We go play that Lions team on the road, and we get blown out of the stadium.
Yeah.
I mean, Goff's literally perfect. Not one incompletion on the day. They run for like over 200 yards. Yeah. Offensively, nothing. So you just go, okay. You know, you just kind of go, all right, I'm not that I'm mad about it, not that I'm over, but it is what it is on it. And I'm not going to dress it up as something else. And I think that, is there a chance we can come back and compete this year? I mean, maybe. Your schedule sets out really well to be very easy as this year goes along. Ours, not so much. Niners, kind of similarly. And so if I'm going to be honest with it, it's just kind of like, it's not really going to probably be there this year.
Well, I appreciate the perspective. And when you and I last collabed, I had just seen a headline about how Mike Macdonald was the Sean McVay of defense for the Seattle Seahawks to hire. And I asked you that, and you said you agree with that. You think he is this, one of this, brilliant defensive minds in football. Are you still of that mindset with him?
Well, I think that this is where we come down to how much do you have to clean up versus how much maybe he underwhelms in the outlook of who he was. And it's very hard to make the determination between those two things. There's a lack of buy-in, there's a lack of ferocity, there's a lack of physicality, there's players going through the motions, and that's what I was getting under Coach Carroll when he was here. And that's where we come down to maybe this being a personnel issue as much as anything else, that we have overinflated the talent that's in this house in Seattle, that they're just not really as good as we kind of thought. But it also could be as much as well as the shine is wearing off on him, and that, maybe he's not as good. I do still think he is a really great coordinator. I will say that Sean McVay in his first year came in there taking over for Fisher, who was not winning, who was not getting you guys to the playoffs. Goff looked like a bust. He came back around, if I'm not mistaken, and brought you guys to like 11-6 record in that first season, and showed you what he brings to the table. And I'm not being shown what Macdonald brings to the table. This defense has not improved from last year. The issues that plagued the defense for the last couple of years still plague the issues again this year. I don't understand why, for instance, there's not more manufacturing from him. There's a lot of lining up in 4-man fronts, soft zone coverages, off coverage, and just sitting back in zone and getting picked apart. It's zone that covers no one, essentially. It's a lot of the oldest stuff we've run. So it has, I'm not drawing any final conclusions on Macdonald, but he's also not done a whole hell of a lot to my eyes here to put this team defensively in a position to get improved, which is what I would expect from a defensive-minded head coach at this point. I would expect there to be some more adjustments you're able to call upon in your book, rather than just sort of sitting there like Carroll did it, then going, I don't know, we're telling them to do it. We're telling them to do it, and they're just not doing it. We say you do it, and then they don't do it. And then we go, huh. And I feel a little bit like that. Like you get this just feeling, these coaches they're kind of shrugging, going, well, we're telling them. And it's just, they're just giving us that dead-eyed look of, I don't know, man. It's wild.
Do you like if the Seahawks were to like sell at the trade deadline? Like, are you saying like Metcalf?
No, I don't know if I would go there. Although what I would say with you in this is that, and this is where Hawk fans probably want to hear this from me on this, but I would go. It's everything would be on the table pretty much. I wouldn't seek to be moving that. I'm not wanting, but here's where I'm landing right now as this continues. We're probably going to have to rebuild a lot more stuff here than we're going to keep. And if that's the case, then that starts to inform a lot of different other things as we've got guys up for contract after this year. And so if somebody's going to give me a great offer and I can become a guy that takes advantage of a seller's market, I'm going to do so. And that there's not going to be sacred calves. There's going to be a whole lot less of the sacred cows in house that are untouchables than there's touchables. And if there's a team that says, hey, you guys got this guy we like, we're willing to give you max value on this guy at this time because we want to go over the top, I would do it at that point. That's if we lose this game. That's if we go, behind that 8-ball like we have. That will be then our 4th loss in conference. That will be our 2nd divisional loss. As I said, the schedule gets tougher down the road with some of these games, including got to play the Niners again. Even the 2 games against the Cardinals are not going to be freebies either. It says you guys learned on it. So I would go this route. I want to take more of a full measure step here on this rather than what we've done in past off seasons, which keep tricking ourselves into thinking we're this close. We're not close. 1 playoff win in 17 since 2017. Yeah, you've had 8-9 wins, or yeah, you get up to 10 wins, you get into playoffs against the Niners a couple years ago, but really the team hasn't looked like that kind of team. And I watch how you guys, I'm watching now, the thing about this year, we're doing that roundtable shows. I got to really watch Niners, really watch Rams. I'm getting a real close appreciation for the differences and the details and the well-run aspect of things. I mean, things like, for instance, finding value after the 3rd round in drafts.
Yeah.
And developing players past that point in the draft. And as great as that haul was with what we got with Russell Wilson here back a couple of years ago with those 1st rounders, and the extra this and the extra that, you've got nothing done past the 4th round really over the past couple of years here.
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, Tariq Woolen had the one good year there in the deal, but absent that, you're not developing. And you've got to make, for instance, we had to sign a guy like Connor Williams because Oluwatimi doesn't develop. And we go draft Haynes this year because the 4th rounder Bradford's just a little too rough. We can't trust in that. And neither of those 2 guys really develop for you. So it's where you can see there's been some holes in our organization of this that we've got to clean up, and too many holes, in my opinion, to think that it's going to happen this season. Seth Kaleo Aloha. Thank you, Seth, for the $5 dono. Offensive line remains the issue. Is it outlandish to say K9 would average 100 plus if he were on the Chiefs? Wouldn't be surprised if he requested a trade. Well, and here's a guy that this is not going to be that Hawk fans won't like to hear, but this would be a guy for me who's going after his 3rd year here now, who would be technically due for a contract extension after this year. I don't want to pay running backs in this sport, number 1. Number 2, we're not really in a position to pay him because we don't have the offensive line to get the most out of him. And so if there was a team at the trade deadline that wanted to offer me maybe not a king's ransom of a haul for Walker, but we're willing to offer a significant draft capital at this point. This is, again, if we lose against you guys, if we win this week, then let's let it ride out and see where it goes. I'm okay with that. But if we were to lose, as we do approach the trade deadline and we have to make this decision, and somebody's team like that, Chiefs team, and nobody wants to trade the Chiefs, but if there's some team out there that's willing to throw me something like that that's substantial as far as trade returns back, I would jump on it at this point myself. I would. That's if we lose the game. Because I think we got to start maxing some of this stuff out, and I don't want to pay a running back. I really don't. What do you think? Should we do that? Would you like my thought process on that, Zach?
So I think, I do think you're because you are someone who's oversaturated with Seahawks content, right? Like because you do this, this YouTube space. So I do think that there might be a little bit of that impacts your opinion. I think that there are some strategic trades the Seahawks could make. I would say that probably Kenneth Walker is one of those. Has his production, is he a talented player? Yes. Is his production so good that you can't get that from somewhere else behind this O-line that you've already said is not doing so hot? So I think if you give him a chance to succeed somewhere else, if you're not going to pay him, it's kind of a do right by the player. Go give him a chance to get paid somewhere else, right?
It is, and it's just you got to make these tactical decisions. There's sometimes tough choices with good players. If you got to go, that you got to do it. But I think this is what good teams do. I told you there's teams in 4 different states of mind, and we can't trick ourselves into believing that we're ascending or that we're elite when we're actually really in between. Because as you see across the sport, teams like Saints, teams like the Cowboys, if you get yourself stuck in this mode, you never take the strong, proper steps to move yourself out of that mode. Yeah. And that's what I'm a little bit worried about with the Seattle team right now is that we trick ourselves every offseason, which is only keeping us in that in-between stage of things. And if you look at the record over the last 7 years, while we have not gotten a playoff, but one playoff win and been in the playoffs like twice in that time span, you've kind of had about a 500 record about over that time period. And so you are sort of the definition of in between. And that means that we're going to have to take some strong steps to kind of dislodge that free. And to me, it's more than just bringing in the bright mind as a head coach. It's going to take a couple of big major steps to make this happen. As it looks right now, things can change, and I'm not coming to a final conclusion on this, but unfortunately, the trade deadline is coming up. You do have to make a call on this, and there may be a trade available to you now that's tasty and juicy that may not be as available to you on that front into the offseason. That's more of what I speak to on the kind of trades I'd make. I wouldn't look to clear house, but if I can take advantage and get a maximum haul back on a guy right now because there's a team desperate to do so, I would do so and wouldn't hold on in the name of the hope that maybe maybe by and large something can really widely shift in a different direction at this point.
And like to bring him back up again, like DK Metcalf, I feel like there would be a market for him if he was available. Like, would you say a third, second round? Like, is that kind of what you value him at, or
no? I think the DK Metcalf's a first round minimum. I also just don't think the DK. There are guys on this team that are helping this team, and DK is one of those guys. You felt the black of his presence in this offense when he wasn't out there against the Bills last week, and what that allowed the Bills to do against you, and you had no other threats offensively speaking. I would be hesitant to move DK Metcalf. I think with Kenneth Walker, you could say that you might get, max value now more than you would get in the offseason for him on that. I don't know if I could say the same thing about DK, where you might be able to more max out that value into next offseason if that's where you want to make that move. Though, again, I'm not really looking at him as being a player that would be at the centerpiece of that because traditionally speaking, wide receivers don't return the haul back in draft capital that you think you'd be getting for what you're kind of giving up, because the team's like, well, now I got to pay 35 million to this guy. So you can only get back this much because of that. So you just don't get the returns quite for those guys that you would for other positions. And even with a guy like Walker, I think you get a second round pick for him. And that's, to me, that would be good value if that's what you're going to get back on that front of it. So yeah, it's a good question with DK. It's certainly something that comes up where people talk about him a lot on that front of, whether or not it is his, or they have to make a decision after the season because he's going to go into the final year of their deal. I would expect him to probably sign him to an extension because he is so important to the offense, no matter what you do moving forward. And he is only 27 years old. I know it seems like he's been playing forever, but he's still kind of a young guy.
Yeah, he's still in prime. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would imagine that they do, when it's all said and done, do keep him. But when it comes down to these guys from that 2022 class that are coming up, Charles Cross playing really well, Boye Mafe playing really well, Tariq Woolen's playing pretty good, and the K9, it's hard to see necessarily being able to pay all those guys, especially when one of them is a running back. That's a position that teams don't tend to pay in the NFL. They'll try to kind of avoid that if they can. I would even think with your Rams, for instance, after what happened with them on the Gurley thing, I'd be very surprised if Kyron, when he comes up for a contract extension, will be signed to an extension rather than them just pivoting through and rolling through that, like they do with sort of the inside linebackers.
Yeah.
You target these positions, you're not going to make as high value.
To be honest, that's something that I purposely don't make videos about, but I get asked about in my comments a lot of, will the Rams pay Kyron Williams? Nothing they've done since the Gurley contract would indicate that's the case. That being said, Kyron Williams has definitely been the best Rams running back since Todd Gurley. We'll see. I think they at least do their due diligence and have a conversation if they can strike some sort of team friendly kind of deal. But yeah, I was surprised when the Saints paid Alvin Kamara a couple weeks ago. And do I think that Kyron Williams gets that kind of deal? No.
I have a theory about that. I think Kamara was going to maybe start to put a little bit of pressure on the Saints for like a trade deadline deal move where it's like, this ain't going to work here. And if you guys, I'm tired of this, whatever. And then you can say, or you can sign me a contract extension and I'll just stay and I'll be the good soldier. I don't know for sure on that. I have no sources on that. That's a complete wild guess on my part, but it just didn't make any sense why you signed him at his age.
Yeah, that's a fair educated speculate. Yeah.
That leverage thing where sometimes those players now, it's like that silent leverage they can wield of, well, maybe I'll just ask to be let out. Maybe I'll just be a disgruntled employee. And then do you want to deal with that on that other side of it? And I think with the Rams, Kyren Williams is a really good running back, but the Rams put a lot of investment in their offensive line as well. And Stafford's a legit quarterback to make defenses be honest when it comes to him as a passer, which is going to then help Kyren Williams be a better running back. Totally. And so it's, can you have that offensive line as quality as it is right now and put another running back there and they'd be just about as productive, almost right at the same spot? And then you're not spending that money. You go get another 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick running back, and then you're spending significantly less than what you would invest on a Kyren. Yes. And I do land in that spot. I'm okay with taking running backs in the 2nd round. I have no problem with that. I wouldn't take a guy in the 1st, but I wouldn't pay running backs. I think you just see too many of those deals not go in the right direction. Even the Niners on McCaffrey, who they got so much out of McCaffrey, but they've now signed him to 2 contracts, and that contract is a bit of an albatross over their neck now as we go into the future on this one. And so I don't know if they look at that as much as that was good for them on that side. So I'd be hesitant if I was the Rams. I'd stay in the process where you guys are at. It's paid off for you doing it this way. And you can always find running backs. You can always, especially got a good offensive line, you can find productive running backs,
Well, and it'll be interesting, Stafford at this point in his career, every year, the question about his retirement's coming up. If he retires, and you have a rookie running or a rookie quarterback or something. And I know there's still the speculation that Stetson Bennett might be the future. I don't know about that. Jimmy G, I like him as a backup, but I don't necessarily want him as my franchise quarterback. So yeah, it'll be interesting. It's fun to always speculate, but I'm content living in the here and now with Stafford and Kyren Williams.
Well, I think that's where you guys are you are competing right now, right? Like things can come together and this team can be a contender and a team that can cause some problems and make some noise. But when Stafford does retire, you're going to have to bite the bullet at that point. And that means that, and this is why I think you saw them a week ago flirting with Cooper Kupp trade or a Stafford trade, is because I think the Rams very much look at this and understand that this is on the horizon for them. You've got still $33 million, I believe, next offseason on next year's cap that you still owe to Donald that comes off of your cap. If Stafford retires, can you just imagine the amount of dead money that you have sitting on that cap for next offseason and what that then does to restrict the Rams for that season in having to kind of get through it, say nothing of having to go find their quarterback of the future. And I think the Rams do the math at that point of saying, okay, we'll have the offensive line place. We'll be developing the defensive line a little bit, but we're going to have to sort of take our medicine for that year. When that happens, it's a bit inevitable. And this franchise shown that they're willing to do that. And it doesn't mean that you guys are then stuck forever in purgatory, but it does mean that, it's going to be a bit tough. Those are 2 substantial dead money hits that you're going to have to be kind of living on if they both happen at the same time. And I kind of would be surprised if Stafford does come back for another year at this point. I feel it just does kind of feel like maybe if they get close, maybe if there's some other factors involved here, he would come back along. But I do think that this is probably with him, the swan song.
Yeah, I'm of the mindset of, I think he has this year and next year, if I were to take my guess at it, I think a large part of that is how well the Rams do this year. And I think if the Rams, went on, some sort of historical run, things like that, he might consider retiring. But from what I've listened to him in a lot of interviews, and I've listened to his wife's podcast way too much. And it just seems like they're content being a football family. They like the life of being a starting NFL quarterback. Stafford, he made an appearance on Fox on the bye week, and wouldn't surprise me. He did pretty good at it too. Wouldn't surprise me if he goes that broadcasting route afterwards. And I think there'll be people that want him to do it. So I think that would be maybe the reason that if he were to retire.
Sometimes the wife's a little too TMI with that podcast.
Well, dude,
I hooked up with his roommate. Boy, that was a rough one. This
Okay, do you know what's stupid is she shares that story once every couple of years, and then it's just this media cycle that some clickbait, journalist is like, Matthew Stafford's wife Kelly Stafford hooked up with his backup quarterback in college, and it's like, okay, she shared that story when he was like with the Lions multiple times, and like
Oh my gosh,
it's really annoying. Yeah.
Keep that one to yourself though. That's one. And if I was the husband, I'd be like, "What do you do? Like, shut up." Because then people start grabbing pictures of the guy. He looks like a goober. The like people are on the hunt for the pictures of the Georgia quarterback. And
it's like, it was interesting because there was one episode where Kelly and Matthew were on together, and Kelly said, she's like, I didn't realize that like by dating you and marrying you and doing this, that like there's this whole NFL like media circus that comes with it. And Stafford has been doing interviews since he was in high school.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And like to go into, but at the same time, like Kelly, you've been around this a while. Like
he's a five-star quarterback coming out. You knew what was. Come on. No, I don't buy that either on that side. Thomas, thank you for the $5 donation. It's good to see you in the chat too today, Thomas. McDonald even said that he hasn't fully installed his full scheme on both sides of the ball. Maybe we need to rebuild. Jimmy versus Joe's. It's where I'm landing on myself right now a little bit, Thomas, with this. I just come back around to it saying, look, I don't like it. I didn't want to be here at the start of the year. I want us to be closer than further away, but we can't force reality to be what we want it to be. We have to watch what we're seeing on the screen and the team that we're seeing on the field and just calmly call it for what it is. And right now, this team looks a lot more closer to needing to be rebuilt than they look being ready to be ascending. And I think that, as I say, we got to be, it's the most important, it's an important question that any football team can ask itself beyond anything else. Get my quarterback, get this, get that. Where are we at as a team truly, honestly? And then make our assessment on the proper way to go from there. So it's not something I'm glad to say either, Thomas. I'm glad you're in the kind of the same place of it. This may just be the reality of what we're dealing with, but it is kind of the reality that seems to be forming here as we go through this NFL season. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate you for that. Snail, thank you for the $5 donation. It says, when you pass 75% of the time and the D knows exactly when you're running the ball, it's not the personnel. So Snail, I would reference it like this a little bit. You're right. Number one, I'm not going to push back at all in the respect of the play calling has been predictable. It's been predictable, 100%. Has the team left running the ball and walked away from running the ball? Yes, they have. Is there some tells to our offense right now? For instance, when we go to 2 tight end looks that we're probably going to be running versus when we go to 3 wide receiver, we're going to be passing. Yes. But where we come back to the personnel side of this is, for instance, why can't you run out of 3 wide receivers? Well, because you can only run up the middle. Well, why can you only run up the middle? Well, because you can't run to the edges, and you can't run to the edges, I believe, in large part because you don't get the blocking to the edges to be able to make those runs work. So it only makes you that much more predictable on those runs when you're in 3 wide receivers. And some of this all comes together. So to me, some of it does become personnel. Your run blocking ability sucks, Snail. And why you're so predictable is, yes, you have an offensive coordinator that has a predilection for wanting to pass the ball. That comes from UW, no doubt about that. But you also have an offensive line that, like we saw last week, is only opening holes up to the tune of allowing the running back 1 yard per carry. If you're going to get 1 yard per carry on the day, and we've seen multiple games here through these early parts where they have run the ball and they've not been consistent in running it, what do you do as an offensive coordinator? Especially if you've got a defense that's allowing points and allowing the other team to score on the other side of it. It starts to become a little bit of the nature of the draw to the offensive coordinator that he's got to pass more and more and more now. So I do think that the personnel is a part of this. It's not the whole part of it, I'd say, Snail, but I do think that that's more and more of a part that's emerging for me on this. Play calling could be better. There's no doubt about that, but I think it's all interconnected. You feeling that?
I got one more question about Gino Smith for you.
Yes.
So when the Seahawks gave Gino his big contract with you guys, and as you mentioned, like he's in a contract year right now, and he's maybe not being set up for success. The most is there. And clearly, you're someone that you believe you can win with Gino. Is there a sentiment that like this year is the final year of Gino Smith as a Seattle Seahawk, and next year they're going to draft a rookie QB?
I think that there's an open-minded thought to this coming through the season. I do have faith and trust in Gino, but it is a bit of a different scenario from like what we talk about with DK. Because if you're going to sign Geno Smith, and you would have to sign him to a contract extension, and though it did seem like a major extension I just offered, by the way, he's only been the 17th highest paid quarterback in the sport over the past 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's not been a substantial quarterback. It's been a pretty team-friendly deal. Now,
Definitely.
With that said, if you're to the point of signing, have to face this choice at the end of the season of whether to sign him to an extension or not, that before you get to the point of how much you give him and where's the team-friendly nature that we can get to on this contract so that we can still build up the roster appropriately, you've got to come to one other question, I think, which is that, are you going to contend in 2025? Yeah. And if you're not contending in 25, because that's a short-term move, it's a 34-year-old quarterback. It's a quarterback that's getting closer to the end than he is to the start. You don't make that kind of move unless you truly think you're going to be contending with absolute certainty. And as it stands right now, I'm a Gino guy, and I'd love to see him here continue into the future because that means we are a contender. But if this team holds to the type of team that they've been so far right now, we don't look like we're in the stage or place right now to be ready to compete for 25, and that would have me pivoting. That's part of the hard decisions that you got to make where you're giving up good players that you don't really want to give up, but the timing is just not right. And that's the way that it does look to me right now, is that we just don't have things aligned up to get the most out of Gino, like we have in the past 2.5 years where he's played really good football, but you still have a lot of casual fans in the sport that don't understand how good he is because he's been held back so much by that supporting cast, which would only then continue into the future, even if you were putting him on that contract extension.
Totally. And I just think of how the quarterback market has inflated so much that Gino had a team-friendly deal when he signed, was it 3 years ago? And then to now re-sign him even in this kind of quarterback ecosystem, like, do you want him to have like a Daniel Jones kind of contract? Like,
no, I don't think you really would. I mean, I would say to you that if you have him if I've got him paid as a middle of the road quarterback and he's giving me top 10 play from the position, those kind of value deals you'd love to stack up on your roster all across the board. Yeah. And that's what you essentially have gotten here from that Gino deal prior. I think the problem comes in is that he could still be giving you that. He could still give you the middle of the road contract, but then again, you don't have the team that's ready to compete at that point. And you have an older quarterback, a guy that injury can come up on these older quarterbacks a lot more readily. Especially if an offensive line that gets the guy beat up like we've had. And we've been lucky enough that he's been able to stay upright. I mean, Donald almost destroyed him last year on a play, had a bruise from the top of his arm to the bottom of his hip. And it's one that I think you got to consider on this. So it's unfortunate on this that we'd have to make this choice, but I think you have to make this decision if you're not ready to roll with it. But he's been great. He's not been the problem. He's outperformed that contract. He certainly deserves to be given a contract extension at this point, being that, and I think there will be teams more than ever now at this point in time who look at the situation in Seattle and what he's been dealing with and understand, hey, we're going to provide him an offensive line. Hey, we're going to provide him a forward-thinking scheme. Hey, we're going to have a defense that's not going to be living on the football field. That's a part of this too, right? Because when you have a defense living on a field and they're spending, they're losing the 2-to-1 time of possession war in a football game, well, that removes that possession time from your offense. If the defense is on the field that amount, then they have to be that much more efficient to be effective in scoring. It just makes it that much harder for an offense, for a quarterback to really go out there and get it done at that point, in my opinion.
No, totally. I think you got another super there.
I know I got a couple here. I'm behind here. Seth, thank you for another $5 donation. Question: when the Niners have to pay Brock Purdy, are we thinking 50 to 55 million? And if so, will they have to make some pretty drastic cuts? Yeah, it's kind of fun watching the Niners face down this decision, isn't it? As they come up into this next offseason. I'll let you lead with this one on. Give me a couple questions on this one, Zach, for you on this one, your perspective as a Rams fan on this. And that is, first, should the Niners pay Brock Purdy? I do think 55, 60 million is more of what we're talking about on an average per year. Should they pay him? And then is this essentially the decision that ends up starting to sort of sink the whole situation there for them, where now they've hit that closure of their Super Bowl window and they're in a turnaround point?
It's such an interesting thing when you have the final pick of the draft who replaced the quarterback that you traded a massive haul of picks to go and then traded away for a 4th round pick, because that 7th round pick has turned into your guy. Should they pay him? I think in today's NFL, the conventional wisdom is yes. The unconventional wisdom is move off him because you have another option, and if you think you can replace his production. But I think they're going to pay Purdy. I think that they kind of lucked out having him work out the way that he did. Like seriously, if the Trey Lance catastrophe would have actually played out and Brock Purdy didn't save them, that franchise would be at the bottom, right? Like Kyle Shanahan would have been fired, like in that, like there's been coaches that have been fired for coaches and GMs that have been fired for less than messing up a big draft haul like that, right?
Yeah.
And so I think they've made it so they have to pay Purdy. And I think that's one of the reasons, they paid Brandon Ayuk this year and the way they've kind of structured his deal. I expect it to be a long, lengthy negotiation that will last into the summer because for whatever reason, if you look at the Niners' history, like it was like that with Bosa. They had with Trent Williams, they had it with Debo had it, Ayuk had it, and I just think it's going to be a thing all next offseason that, what's Brock Purdy going to get paid, right? And he's a quarterback that, he led you to the Super Bowl. He led you to the conference championship the year before. I'll say this, like as a football fan, there is a lot to like about Brock Purdy's game. I think his best skill is his decision-making. He does kind of wear that label of a point guard quarterback, getting the ball to his playmakers. And yeah, I think they're going to pay him. And I think if the Niners Super Bowl window closes, they're going to try and reopen it with a roster structure that looks very different. I think they'll keep, they'll always want to keep, that defensive end position. They'll always want to pay, your left tackle, your quarterback, and they might not have, the money to have a high-priced running back, a high-priced tight end, two high-priced wide receivers, right? And plus your defensive end and a defensive tackle in Hargrave too that commands quite a salary. So they'll have to make some tough decisions if they do pay him that money, but we'll see. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because it's stretched out. They're negative in the money right now as it stands for 2025. They're going to roll over this year's cap a little bit to be able to augment some of that. But I think that when you sign Brock Purdy the contract, and I don't think there's any way that they can come back to him and say that he has to take one dime less than Tua got or Lawrence for that matter, because he's far outperformed both those two guys. Totally. So I think you have to saddle up and pay him. I think that they're in a real tough spot though, where it's going to probably cost them Deebo Samuel and probably Kittle as the two cuts that they have to make in order to fit that in. They're also at a spot where they're starting to land in the void moneyville when it comes to the guys that are going to be on the roster. They're like Shedeur Ward's going to be off the roster next year, but they're going to still be paying him like $9 million. They can't get out of the Hargrave contract like you talked about, which I think they would like to. They just re-upped on McCaffrey. How much longer is he going to have with, as he gets closer and closer to that 30-year-old kind of mark of things? Trent Williams is going to kind of do the Aaron Donald thing, which is you guys got stuck in a tough place, that Donald situation where he goes, okay, I want my contract extension. And then a year later, I'm going to retire. That hurts. That stings that hurts the cap, man. I mean, it really burns. And so that would really, again, on top of a situation that's already treacherous, put them in real tough spot. So they're stuck. They have to pay him. He's earned the right. How can you come back to that guy? I was talking to Jesse last second sports, like, well, I'm gonna make him play on his fourth year. How do you make him play on his fourth year with how he's performed? How do you come back to that guy and not reward him at that point? I understand the hesitancy to pay him, but you're kind of stuck in this boat of having to pay him whether you like it or not. Unfortunately, he's earned the deal,
and like the reality is because of the rookie wage scale, he has had zero leverage his whole contract, and now he's about to get all the leverage, right?
That's right.
And so I think he's going to command. I don't know if he gets Dak money, but I think he's going to shoot for it.
Yeah. Well, even Tua money to me kneecaps the hell out of them as an organization. If they had other guys that weren't spending so much money or having guys right at the end of their career or dead money hitting on the books, it'd be different. But all of those are factoring into this at the same time as this contract. And I think it just puts him, DeMondre Lamar is having a great year. Are they going to be able to afford to pay him? Probably not. He's going to probably end up walking for him. And so it's, they're in a tough spot, the Niners. This is what happens, though, when you get the end of the Super Bowl one, and they've had such a long Super Bowl windowed run here that the longer it is, the more the substantial kind of impact to the cap, I think, is you're trying to keep it together as long as you can and signing those guys. And they've really made no tough decisions. They've really not come in and said, well, it always kind of comes back where they just keep elongating it out. Like I thought the Ayuk thing, they probably should have moved him and offloaded and got some trade capital and made the get, or moved Debo and signed him at that point, and offset it. Yeah. But they're trying to max him out this last final, year window or last 2 years of the window. And I get that. I do. But I think you do pay the price eventually for it. Thank you, though. Appreciate you, Seth, for the dono. Thomas, thank you for another $5 donation. He says, well, I believe it depends on what quarterback comes out. If it's Ward from Miami or Milroe from Bama, who plays in Grubb's scheme, both can learn from Gino. Yeah, I think Thomas, and I can't guarantee it would be this way. We've had John Schneider in the past have 3 quarterbacks on the active roster at any one time, but you do have Sam Howell on a cheap 1 year, $1 million deal after this year. I think they'll like that at that price as the backup. I think that if John wants to go and look at, to your point, and he might want to, Thomas, to your point, because there'll be a lot of those second, third round quarterbacks in this draft. We've seen him before. Rather than stockpiling picks to go get a guy up in the first round, he's been a guy that, like he did with Wilson, I'll take a guy in the third round who's maybe started a lot of games and he's got some upside, and I'll put a great supporting cast around him. And I got his rookie deal to work off of with that. So I certainly think he could be in play to draft guys like that, Ward especially in that way. But I don't think that would come with Gino still being here, where you're going to have 3 quarterbacks. It's possible. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I would just wonder if that would be the route John would go versus you move Gino, you have then Hal here, you draft Ward, you have them battle it out in training camp for the best man. You are in a bit more of that rebuild mode like we're talking about. So there's less of an outlook of 2025 has to be a contending time. It's more about, okay, getting the right guys in and getting this thing fully set. So I think you can definitely go that route, Thomas. I could see it, but I don't know if you do it with Gino. That's the part I'd wonder about on that side of it. What do you think the Hawks should do, by the way? If you said where you stand as a non-partisan,
I think the Hawks should just keep doing what they're doing.
Maintain.
Realistically, I think I'll stand by with what I said. I always viewed the Seahawks as this is like an evaluation year. I never saw the Seahawks as a team that's like if the season goes well and you're in contention for the playoffs, cool. But I always thought this was kind of the year. All right, we're going to let some of these contracts play out, see who earns some more money, or people we're going to move on from. I do expect a lot of roster turnover next offseason for this Seahawks team. Yeah,
I'm expecting that as well. So, but thank you, Thomas. I appreciate the double donation, and both those guys are very interesting. With Milroe, I'm a little worried about him as a passer. I no doubt about him as a mover and a shaker and a guy that can roll around back there, but he doesn't always seem like the most natural or thrower of the football to me. Whereas Ward can sling it. He's a gunslinger back there.
What about, I gotta ask, because I just think he's gonna be one of the most interesting NFL players if he gets a chance. Sanders.
Oh, Jesus. I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole.
No?
No. The quarterback position has got to be one that's different from how other players are on the football field. I'm a big believer in you've got to be the nerd. You've got to be the almost like a coach.
Yeah.
You've got to be kind of above sometimes doing some of the other, I want to rock. I want to be all swaggy. I want to be all, I want to be all, a little bit like his dad was, prime time and me and spotlight on me. And like, well, you can do that as a cornerback. You can do that as a cornerback. You can't do that as a quarterback.
Yeah.
And, throwing his linemen under the bus.
Yeah.
I think that, I can't trust him as a leader. I wouldn't want to sign up for the Deion experience as well, because you're going to have Deion every week in there as well, whether he's in the facility, but tweeting and just And I just think it makes it impossible. He's a very talented guy. He's got top 10, top 5 worthy level of talent at the quarterback position and what he can do. But it's neck up as well. It ain't just about your physical measurables and what you can do on that. I mean, we're learning this a little bit with Anthony Richardson right now, and Anthony doesn't have anywhere near the problems of Shedeur as far as, you know, the all about me stuff that I sense with him a little bit. Whereas with Anthony, it is just more neck up processing. He probably should have been sitting this past year or two for the Colts rather than them throwing him out onto the football field, which I said a couple years ago. And these organizations, NFL, they have no sense of patience or no sense of understanding of how to develop quarterbacks. It's just constantly throw them into the deep end and see if they can swim, and then shocked when they don't. Well, he just didn't know how to swim. Loser. What a failure. That guy's a complete failure.
Can I tell you my dream for Shedeur Sanders?
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't told this publicly, but just chat, Brandon. This is a dream of mine. There is a head coach vacancy with the New York Jets.
Mm-hmm.
I want Deion Sanders to be the head coach of the Jets. And then I want him to trade up to draft his own son, Shedeur Sanders.
You do it.
And, totally would. But like for the off the field entertainment value that is the New York Jets, going from Aaron Rodgers to that, like I don't want that happening to my team. Don't get me wrong, but like, could you not see it?
I could see that it would be on brand for the Jets to do something like that. Number one, because that's an organization that just can't get out of its own way. I would say that Deion's not done a good enough job at Colorado to get any sort of opportunities at the NFL level. This has not been a success story with him there at Colorado. And I think the questions and worries and trepidations you'd have about Deion coming into Colorado as a head coach with his personality type and his whole shtick have been confirmed on that front of it. I definitely am. Hey, it'd be fun for the entertainment value, no doubt about that. And the Jets organization's horrible as far as how they run their they do not have any kind of vision in what they're doing. They're completely reactionary, it seems, year by year. But I want to see him just go to some small market team and myself. I want to go just I'm trying to think of like who'd be the tiny like
Jags or something.
Yeah, like the Jags, just somewhere where it's just there's no bright lights, there's no spotlight, make him earn it and grind through on it a little bit, so to speak.
That's
on that,
fair. That's
on
fair.
that angle. Yeah. But he's great talent.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with him, but I don't think he's gonna be the Seahawks quarterback of the future.
No, I don't either. I think John would be very hesitant to go down, that road. But it's going to be interesting to see what John's going to do at the quarterback position. He's never gone up and drafted high. You haven't had to pick guys in a long time. You had Russ, you've had Gino. It's been a one where they've kind of been biding a bit of their time. Hal, I like. He's a decent talent. I don't know if he's the future, but he's got some talent. He's got some ability. So we'll see if we make some moves there on that angle of it. A couple of other questions I had just for you on your Rams team that I want to ask you about. One thing that I noticed that I haven't been able to quite understand at times when they do it. And then I know maybe they've been doing it, I think, a little bit less the last couple of weeks to your eyes, which is the Kobe Turner, Braden Fisk, 2 defensive tackles inside thing, where you're like with 2-3 techs, essentially 2 guys that are sort of 290 pounds on the inside with a 4 down lineman kind of front. And then it seemed like teams started when they saw that, they would almost be like a check from offenses where they would then go to the run to attack those guys inside, because you're essentially missing a 1 tech at that point. You're missing a nose tackle when you're putting those 2 guys out there. Turner's a good player. They're both good players, but I look at them as more both 3 tech types, as more of those are more penetrators, more not 2 gapping, hold the line against 2 blocker type guys. Can you speak to a little bit of where that's been at? Is that something I'm seeing correctly or accurately, and has it gone away in the last couple of weeks?
So one of my frustrations with this Rams defense is, and that I would say their best game was against the Vikings last week, especially in that second half. But there has just been some weird scheming, from Chris Shula and this defensive, front. I can't specifically put a exact pin on it. I am wondering if it was kind of a defensive philosophy of like you almost want to like how how like teams do like a fake blitz to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like they want to do the opposite of like we don't want you to think we're blitzing at all because we have like these, these 4 pass rushers up front there. So I don't really know the actual kind of logic behind it. I'm excited to see it keep going because it worked really well against the Vikings. And I do think that especially Jared Verse on the edge, figuring some stuff out. And I think that if he becomes the monster that we think he is, I could see Kobe Turner and Braden Fisk getting a lot of pressure there on the inside.
Yeah, definitely. When you run them out of knowing passing downs, put them in there. There are a handful in there, especially with that stunt stuff that they can do in there. But I'd look for my Hawks, especially to have some audible points to where if you see those 2-man, guys up there in that spot, I'm going downhill on them all day. I don't care if I'm 2nd and 8 or that's something to me that you got to attack.
That's what teams have been doing. It's been working, right? Yeah.
It's hard to run that light of an inside like that. It really is, especially as these edges sometimes get wider and wider out in the modern NFL, where you sometimes get this real width between your 2 inside defensive tackles to your outside edges, where they get outside that shoulder of their tackles on either side. And you got a lot of width and space in there. And it's just a lot to ask guys hold up if they're not real big and able to be, strong at the point of attack in there. So probably a real key battle point to look at. And I got to give you guys credit in that game against the Vikings where they were throwing the ball pretty well. We had 4 straight touchdowns on the first, 4 straight drives to start that game out. But then you did see your Rams team at that point really, really step up the run for the Vikings. They lost any ability to run that game as it went along through the second, third, fourth quarter. Completely nothing. And
part of it is the Vikings lost their left tackle.
That's true. Darashaw is a huge loss for them on that. The second that lost, that was another pivot point in this game. And, people get caught up so much. It's where I hate that people get caught up so much on one plays, especially a final play or there's this play. And I rail against it so hard. Where football game is the culmination of all the plays. You don't cherry pick a single play and say, but this thing here. And I thought that this game was one that you guys won because of the fact that you stopped the run, because they were able with Jones to get running early. He was able to find some holes there. And then it was a game about, Donald having one of his malfunction moments that he has. So I don't like Donald as a quarterback. He has skill. He showed you on those first couple drives that he can sling the ball around the field. But then you get that late moment in this game where he steps up in the pocket, clears the pass rush. He's got a guy about 7 yards ahead of him. He's got the first down marker 3-4 yards ahead of him. And it's a no-brainer moment there where as a quarterback, you just fall forward and get the first down. But he decides to haphazardly throw a wild ball, sidearm kind of throw, and throws it around away from it. And it's a drop pass at that point. You go, boy, Don, just run that in there. Just put your head down and drive forward for the first down.
So it's interesting. Sam Darnold has actually had more games against the Rams than you'd think he has. He won his first game against the Rams when he played with the Jets. That was the disastrous Adam Gase Jets or whatever, and it was an embarrassing loss. But since then, Sam Darnold, when he was with the Panthers, the Niners, and now the Vikings, has not had success against the Rams. So I definitely think there's something to it that the Rams know, they've seen on tape from him, because they've shut him down in games. Now, he got Justin Jefferson going in the first half, as expected. But they shut him down pretty good. And I acknowledge that the one play is a spectacle and it denied them the opportunity to go down the field. But that game was won by the Rams, especially in that third quarter.
Yeah, the way that their offensive play, that's the thing with this too, everyone. And it's weird how people do this where they go, no call, that's costing the game. So the Vikings with 1 minute and 15 seconds left and no timeouts or one timeout would have gone all the way up the field in that moment and scored a touchdown and gotten the 2-point conversion when they hadn't done nothing offensively throughout that whole second half, really? Yeah. I don't think so. I don't think I buy that. That's why I'm not getting caught up on one single play on this and going, is this one little, single play? No, you had plenty of times to take care of business to the Vikings team, and they lost that game, rightfully so. So it was interesting to watch so many people, though. People get freaked out on these one plays. And I just noticed it's one play. It said 145 plays in a football game, and we're going to grab this one play and say, this was the end all determinant. Now, all that's irrelevant over here. All that's 50-50 between the two. It was all 50-50 between the teams on all of those 143 other plays, completely 50-50. And this one thing was the thing that pushed it over the margin to the other side. I don't think so on that. Seth, thank you for another $2 donation. He asks, why did the Rams give away Ernest Jones? Well, Zach was lamenting a little bit on this earlier. I'll let him follow up on this. I think there's some question mark here when it comes down to it, Seth. It's a little bit of, I think it's this and I think it's that, but not necessarily a lot of certainty.
So and again, the Rams did a great job of just keeping it in-house. That's the language that Sean McVay always uses when he doesn't want to tell the press anything. We're just going to keep this in-house. But he said it was a team decision, and it was in the best interest of the team. I like many Ram fans were frustrated when it happened because, again, as I lamented earlier, that I thought this was Ernest Jones' defense. Even if they didn't re-sign him, I thought he was going to play out his contract this year. He just came off of setting the touch or the tackles record for the Rams franchise in a single season, breaking James Laurinaitis' record. It was a curious but not unprecedented. The Rams and Les Snead do have a history of doing these pick swap cap dump moves, or when a player, they feel that there's a falling out or something like that. Like they did it with Robert Woods. That's one of the first ones. They traded him away for a 6th round pick, and Kenny Young before that, who was also a linebacker. So I don't like that Ernest Jones is in Seattle, but take care of him, guys.
Well, you guys have been proven right on making those moves, right? It hasn't been back where you look in retrospect and you go, well, we gave that guy away. We shouldn't have done that. That bit us on the butt for doing that. I mean, I think you said earlier, and I think it's right, that I do think your inside linebackers are suffering from a bit of his loss, but it was also, if he was going to remain there, you're going to have to probably, get him on an extension at some point or do something with it on that. So it's not just as simple as could have kept him and just had everything by the way the lay of the land was.
And to kind of put it a different way, the hope is, with the draft capital that you've invested in your defensive line, you hope that covers any, talent lapse that might be from the inside linebacker position.
That's fair enough. They keep him a little more cleaner, allow him just to run around and go make tackles and not have as many second level guys scraping down off, from a center coming down, picking you up, because they have to dedicate that to the actual defensive lineman in front of them. Thomas does touch on something that's a good conjunction with your point on this, though. Thanks for the $2 donation. What is Payo Time's opinion? Byron Murphy, the Seahawks first rounder. There was a video that came out with a behind the scenes this past year. I'm sure you saw it, with a little bit of McVay and Snead going at it. McVay over there going, I want Donald. And Snead going, no, we're going to be patient. We're just in the pot. No, you do it. You do not. I'm the general manager here. I don't freak out. I'm not asking us to be reckless. I've never been reckless my whole life. He gave him like a Clint Eastwood tough guy response. It was awesome to McVay in the moment. What a great little behind the scenes moment there too to see. But had many Hawk fans feeling good, Zach, about the Byron Murphy selection?
Yeah. There's so much about the last draft class, especially the first round, that was entertaining, from the videos coming out to I don't know. I sent you that article by Jordan Rodrigue that was really interesting. I don't know if you got a chance to read it. And it's just hearing more about like kind of the Rams draft philosophy has been really cool. It would have been cool if you had Byron Young, right? In retrospect, I'm really happy with Jared Verse. He has been a phenomenal pickup for the Rams. I think that both the Seahawks and the Rams benefited from both, Murphy and Verse dropping as far as they did in the draft, because realistically, if this was a draft from 10 years ago, they're probably top 10 picks, right? And so I've only watched I watched every game and every snap of the Rams. I have watched a fair amount of Seattle because I do think they are one of the more interesting teams that I'm interested in. And I think you always have to give credit, where they're at. Of Murphy is a high ceiling, rookie prospect, and he's got a lot of talent, and, we'll see. What are you guys happy with him?
Yeah, I think we're feeling good about it. He had a hamstring injury, knocked him out, I think, for a week or two there, but he's been solid. He's doing his job. He's getting it done. Like you said, we got 14 straight offensive players that started this draft out for the first time in NFL history. And we were two of the organizations that got to be the main benefactors of that. And that the team that then picks that first defensive player is going to get themselves a hell of a defensive player, because It's not that the 14 best players in this draft were all offensive players. It's that it played out that well and it went out that way. So, we did get out to the other side of it. Your Rams team, you got to feel good about their approach, I think, as far as the guys they were looking to target there, being that Byron Murphy, it looks like he's going to be a good player in this league. And the other guy that they were looking and moving up for before Murphy is looking like he's going to become one of the great tight ends in this sport, Brock Bowers. Another guy that, you go, hey, we were on the right guys. We didn't get the guys, but we are targeting the right guys. We end up with Verse, who is the right guy. You got 3 of the first round guys that all 3 you got right on in your decision making to say these should be guys we look to target if we can. And that should embolden you a lot for your front office. Not that you weren't already, but should for their ability to pick and how they target and who they look to target.
Yeah. I've been doing it's taken me a long time, but I've been doing a pretty in-depth study. I'm hoping for a video to come out next offseason about it, of like ranking and evaluating every trade by Les Snead ever as the Rams GM since 2012. And one thing that I find extremely interesting is like he is really masterful at taking account for the player situation of where they're coming from college, where's like their family, everything like that. But then also evaluating, scheme fit, culture fit, everything that comes into being an NFL player. And anytime he's traded up in a draft, like there's the first round trade ups like Jared Goff, things like that. But I'm thinking more kind of the later rounds, like when they trade up to get a Braden Fiss, it was because of that first round pick in Jared Verse, right? Yeah. And it's kind of a draft strategy that's truly like, each pick is not its isolated incident. Each pick is a unit that's coming into the ecosystem of the NFL team. And I really like it. Yeah.
Well, and to your point on that, that's where you look at it on the surface of a Hawk fan like myself going, Fisk, you're trading up in the second round for Fisk like I did. But then you see how there's a plan in place in their use of the stunt game and these guys as teammates that have worked together back at Florida State running those kind of games, and that they're a little more advanced along in their ability to run it because they've run it together like that. And you go, oh, okay, I see. I see how the plan was put together and put in motion. It's not just simply, go up and beat your guy, but there's a little bit of an extra layer to this one. So they do. Your team does a great job, man, both front of the draft and finding some talent in the back of the draft in recent years. And those trades of Snead in these past few years, I think it's the Goff trade with Stafford and what you had to do to make that wasn't an easy trade, and giving up extra draft capital so that you could get the Lions to eat the money on the Goff things so that you could afford Stafford. Like, he makes it happen, and you got to give him a tip of the cap of being a really good GM. And it doesn't help on top of it. You got the money that you can use with Kroenke there, and that you've got kind of the endless coffers as well to work off of. And boy, it's not a great combination for my Seahawks staff to counter. We like a lot better when those organizations are cheap, and they got they're charging the players soda like Cardinal fans, like Cardinal players getting charged sodas in the locker room, and it's like I like that a lot better. I like it like that. That's the competition I like. How's Colby Parkinson been, by the way? You guys gave him a pretty significant contract from our Hawks this offseason. I've watched a few games. I didn't really want to necessarily keep him, but I thought the contract was a little much you guys gave him. Yeah. Feels a little underwhelming in watching him right now for your Rams. Like, he's getting his opportunities. He's being put at times kind of on display as that number 1 tight end with Higbee out. But I don't know that I've necessarily seen in my eyes that he's rising to the occasion on that. How about you?
Honestly, yeah, it's been a little disappointing. He's had some interesting, like, situational first downs that have come up and helped move the chains. If I'm being honest, though, like, him as a blocker has been more productive than him as a pass catching tight end. Higbee being out, and we still have that is one of the greatest mystery in the Rams right now. No clue what's going on with Tyler Higbee. And they've been pretty silent about it. So in that regards, Parkinson's doing all right. But like, if I compare him to like Davis Allen or even a Hunter Long in the Rams tight end room, I don't see that much of a difference in terms of production. And for what we paid him, you would have liked to see a little more. But we'll see. Season's still young.
He's not a bad guy. I just think it's for when you start giving those guys that money, that's where you start to look a little more to the limitations as much what they bring to the table. And, with him as a contested catcher, for instance, it's not as much there, what you'd like to see. It's weird. It's a part of his game that kind of left from Stanford. That was the part, Stanford couldn't block. Really good contested catcher with a huge catch radius, climb the ladder, all that. And as a pro is more developed into the blocking game, and the pass catching hasn't really come, as much forward as you thought would might be as kind of a centerpiece to what he does. So
yeah.
Interesting in that way. Stephen Evans, thank you for the $5 donation. He says, let's go Dodgers. Let's go Dodgers. About to wrap this series up, it looks like, huh? On that one. And congrats for them. Oh, did we lose you? I can hear you. Did it lose your, can you hear me? I can definitely hear you.
Hello?
I can hear you. There you are.
Oh, cool. Oh, sweet. Sorry. My internet decided to be wonky for a sec there. Yeah. Hey, what's up, Stevens? Good luck to your Dodgers.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck to the Dodgers there, Steven. They're rocking and rolling, man, and they do look like they're going to take it. Tough for another organization here, Mariners, talking about not spending money versus teams that do spend money. Woo! We're a couple $100 million off, it feels like, of those teams as far as payroll goes on a yearly budget. But Dodgers, hell of a team, and another looks like they're going to get themselves another World Series. So congrats to them, Steven. I think that's your guys' their 34th World Series or something like that, historical-wise, if you put them all together, I think, something like that. Or we get your internet jumpy again?
I can just tell
you can hear me.
I can tell my weather is starting to impact my internet connection.
Well, let's do this. We got to a good spot on this, I think. Let's get your prediction for this game. Give me a score. Give me how you see how this is playing out. We'll kind of wrap it up on that note.
Okay. I haven't thought about this on my head. I'm going to talk out loud. Nervous about Mike McDonald. The Seahawks, I'm always nervous about a team coming off of a bad loss. Might rebound. Divisional game. I do like what the Rams are doing. I think they got a lot of momentum going into this game. I like the Rams' young D-line against the Seahawks O-line. I think this could be a game that has kind of a weird vibe for the first half, and then the second half, the Rams are able to get ahead and keep that lead, kind of that old school McVay formula for a victory. I'm gonna say the Rams win because I never pick against the Rams because I'm a homer, and that's okay. And I'm gonna say it's a 27-23 kind of game.
I think that's pretty fair, man. Where we've been playing at, and when we've gone up against legit level of competition, that's sort of the way that this is kind of rolled. So for the most part, so I think that's pretty fair. I think we're going to have a really hard time stopping your run in this game. Even the Falcon game we won a couple weeks ago, that Falcon team was able to run. We were just able to get up ahead of them so much that they had to go away from the running a game. I don't think your Rams are going to run into that same sort of kind of problem. We've got to pick Stafford off. If he gives you a couple opportunities at times in games and you can force him to do that, if they're just not able to do anything they want, we got to do it if we get those moments, because sometimes he can throw it up for you and give you those chances. Not that he doesn't play great, but he'll just give you maybe those wild 1 or 2 throws a game where you get a chance. So we're going to have to take advantage if that's going to be the case. But I think that your outlook on this is very fair, Zach. Not just homerism, but very fair on this one.
What's your prediction for this game?
I would say I'm going to go 27-17 Rams.
Okay.
Yeah, this team's going to have to earn. I'm as homer as anybody else, but when I've been embarrassed in 4 straight losses, four of the last 5 games, we've been flat embarrassed on the football field. Not just simply lost the game, but we've been like, I can't believe that was on the national stage. We just people are going to talk trash, and they deserve to talk trash about us for that performance. That was awful. So until this team starts to show it to me and prove it to me and show there's some kind of semblance of consistency within this team, I got to go to the other realm of it if I'm going to try to analyze it and be real with it and not just be completely biased. So I'd love to be fully on board with it here, but it's just, they've got to engender that level of confidence. Your team's engendered it. 3 out of 3 wins in the last 5 games, getting healthier, getting your 2 wide receivers back. There's a reason for you to have that optimism for this upcoming game. My team hasn't shown me that as far as anything close on an equivalency. So That's where it's got to land. Well, folks, do me this favor, if you could for me, hit that like button here on this video. That does help out this channel and this video to be shown up to other people looking for a good game preview of this Rams matchup. Please as well do me this favor. He's taken out almost 2 hours of his day during a busy season. You know, these guys, we're running 100-hour weeks right now when you're a content creator during in-season like this, especially if you have a job like Zach does on the side. But he's taken time out of his day here to hang with us, as he's done a couple times over. So the least that we can do here on our side of it here at the Hawks Nest is click down in the description section below. You'll see a direct link to Payo Time here on YouTube. That's Zach's channel here on YouTube. Please sub on up to his channel. It doesn't cost you anything. We're going to have him back here again here and do another preview when our Rams come back and face it again in a couple at the end of the year, actually, last game of the year, I believe. Is the way that we're. So that'll be a very interesting game potentially down the line. And I thank you, Zach, for doing this, man. I really, really do appreciate it. And, you know, I wish you best of luck to your team this year, man. You guys got a hell of a team, and hope not any luck this week, but you know.
Likewise. Fair enough, Brennan. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey, my pleasure, man. It's always a great time having a chance to chop it up with you. And thank you guys, all the donators, Thomas Cox, Stephen Evans, Seth. You guys are amazing. Snail multiple times over. You guys are awesome on that front. You guys always are on that front. I really appreciate you guys. We'll be back here soon. I got the roundtable show tonight where I'm going to have to take my medicine with 3 guys that all got the win in this division, Zach, and they're just going to do nothing but beat up on me constantly throughout. They're just going to do nothing but rub my face in the net. But I'm going to stand tall to it. I'm going to take my medicine.
Looking forward to watching it. Yeah. Have a good night, everyone.
Well, appreciate you, man. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll be back soon. Zach, we'll have you back on here real soon as well. But until next time, guys, please don't you ever forget, go Hawks.
Go Rams.